Section 1 of The Golden Heart and Other Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Tom Shoesmith. The Golden Heart and Other Fairy Stories by Violet Jacob. Section 1. The Golden Heart. The night lay clear upon the North Sea, but now and then a soft wind came floating by. It whistled through the rigging of a fishing smack in which a little boy lay under a tarpaulin, peeping over the side of the boat down into the water below. His father had told him to be still and go to sleep, so he lay looking up at the spangled sky above and the masts rocking to and fro against the stars as the boat swayed about. Sometimes he thought the tall, dark forms looked like black arms trying to reach the bright lamps and put them out. He did not feel sleepy as he lay by himself, and he began to wonder, as he gazed into the water, how deep it was down there, and whether the little fishes among the shells and seaweeds were ever told by their fish fathers to go to sleep, and if so, whether they found it as hard to do as he did. Presently he saw the eyes of a great shining fish staring up at him. It opened its mouth as if it wished to be friendly, but hardly knew how to begin, so the little boy plucked up courage, though he had never met a fish before, and was not quite sure how to address one. "Is it very cold in the sea?" he inquired shyly. "That depends on what you're accustomed to," replied the fish. "For my part, I should say it was a particularly warm night for the time of year. What in the world do you find to do in that monstrous boat? Is there anything worth eating up there?" "It's very dull," said the little boy. "My father said I was to go to sleep, but I can't. I'm not sleepy." "Why don't you come down here?" suggested the fish. "It stands to reason that it must be much more amusing in the water." "I should be drowned. I can't swim like you." "How dreadfully ignorant," remarked the fish. The little boy was rather hurt at this, and made no reply. "Well," continued the hoarse voice from below, "if you like to come with me, I can show you some of the most wonderful things in the world. You can hold by my tail, and I'll pull you along. You can't drown so long as you don't let go." The little boy was much tempted. "But are you sure you won't leave me?" he asked anxiously. "Goodness, no," replied the fish. "I'll see that no harm comes to you. You're evidently a shockingly ignorant child, and it would be a real charity to show you something of the world. Come along, and don't be silly." The little boy looked round to see that there was no one near. Then he slipped over the side, and in another minute was in the sea and holding firmly to the tail of his new acquaintance. Away they shot through the clear water. It was not nearly so cold as it had looked, and the rapid motion was very exciting. On they flew, smoothly and easily. They passed tall ships and curiously shaped masses of rock sticking up out of the sea. Great twisted pieces of seaweed floated by them, and the flashing lights of Orion's belt seemed suspended from the dark blue arch overhead, while up in the north the northern lights shot their trembling streamers far into the center of the sky. By the time day was dawning they had reached a tract of ocean where there was neither sail nor coast, and where the rolling line of water stretched for miles around. "Now," said the fish, "I'll show you one of the strangest things in the world. Can you see anything between us and the horizon?" "I see a dark spot a long way off." The light was growing brighter every moment, and pale streaks in the sky began to kindle the sea when the fish and his companion drew near the object of which they had been speaking. In the midst of the heaving water there rose a steep rock. On its grim sides grew neither seaweed nor anything to give sign of life. There was an oppressive silence hanging over everything, and the water lay dark and still. No little wave played against the relentless stone. On the top of this rock a beautiful woman sat with her hands clasped together. She wore a black robe against which her arms shone like ivory, and her hair flowed in a shower over her shoulders. Now and then she raised her eyes and looked out to sea. They wandered over the horizon and rested with a look of sad expectation upon it. Then she sighed and glanced down at something which she held in her hand. Beside her stood the only living creature, excepting herself, visible on that desolate place, a gigantic gray cormorant of terrible aspect and size. A gleam of light from the rising sun shot over the waters, and as it touched the woman's hair with its first rays, the cormorant flew up into the air. From some hidden place in the rock another bird appeared, and, joining its mate, rose with him far above their bleak abode. Then the two sailed away and were soon lost in the distance. "What does it all mean? Oh, do tell me," begged the little boy. "I thought I could show you something surprising," chuckled the fish. "This is the history of it. I am one of the very few who know anything about it. Inside that rock, in a cavern which is reached by a passage to which no one knows the entrance, sits an old witch. She is very wicked, and is sometimes able to cast dreadful spells upon her enemies. That princess who sits there is the daughter of a king, whose country is an immense way off, and who once had the ill luck to offend the old woman. So when the princess was a child she went to the king's palace and stole her away. Here she has kept her sitting, year after year, upon this lonely rock with no one to speak to but the old cormorant. Every day he keeps guard in case someone should come to take her away, and every morning he flies off to fish with his mate, who has a nest just now and young ones in a cave of the rock. Once in 2 days the hag comes out to bring the princess food, and to ask her whether she sees anyone coming, and when she gets no reply, she laughs and leaves her again. "Will she ever get away?" asked the little boy. "How can I tell?" said the fish. "She has sat there for so long that it doesn't seem like it. There's only one chance that I can see. She holds in her hand a little heart made of gold. If she could only find someone to whom she could give it, she might be saved. For whoever possesses it can ask any question, and the heart will answer and tell its owner how to act under all difficulties. But he who takes it has to accept trouble and pain with the gift." "But then, why doesn't she ask it herself how to get away?" "The heart is of no use to any one but a man," said the fish. "And I suppose no man has ever been here?" "2 or 3 have come sailing by. One who came was anxious to help the princess, but as she was about to throw him the golden heart, she told him that if he took it he would have to face as much trouble as a man could bear, so he would not have it and sailed away. But that was years ago. And now we really can't stay here any longer, nor do any good if we do, so let us be off." And he swam away. The little boy would have liked to stay and speak to the princess, and his eyes were full of tears. "What are you sniffling at behind there?" exclaimed the fish, who was getting rather tired of his load. "I'm so sorry for her," he sobbed. "Dear, dear, if you cry for all the troubles you see, you'll have enough to do. Try to think of something else, and for goodness' sake strike out a little with your legs and help me along. I have to do all the work." The little boy was so frightened when he heard this that he kicked out with might and main for fear that his protector would shake him off. When evening was coming on, and when they had travelled some distance, they saw a large ship. As she approached, the fish suggested that they should swim alongside, and the little boy was charmed with the idea. They saw that the sails were embroidered with gold and silver, and that on the prow there was an immense carved crown glittering with precious stones. Closer and closer she came till they were almost touching her. A man was looking over the bulwark into the water. He was young and very richly dressed, and a sword hung at his side. Over his face was a black mask which hid it completely, leaving only the mouth visible. "There," remarked the fish. "Look at that man. That's another wonderful sight. He's young and rich and a king's son, but he chooses to sail about by himself. He's so ugly that he wears a mask day and night and never takes it off, and he roams about on the high seas so that he need see none but his own crew, who love him so much that they would go down with him anywhere." "What a pity," said the little boy, wondering. "He looks very nice, standing up there with those beautiful clothes on, and I can see his mouth. It does not look so very ugly." "It's simply enormous," replied the fish. "Oh, I don't think so, really," answered the little boy. "It isn't any bigger than yours, you know." "That's neither here nor there," said the fish. "And don't pull my tail so. You hold it so clumsily I can hardly move." "I wish I could see him nearer," continued the little boy, lost in admiration of the figure above him. "I've never seen anyone like him." "You haven't seen much," answered the fish, who had not been best pleased by the allusion to his mouth. "Now, come along."
"Oh, wait a minute, do, please. He's looking at us."
The prince was gazing over the bulwark at them. "Well," exclaimed the fish, "if you're so devoted to him, you'd better stay with him altogether. I'm getting sick of dragging you along like this." The poor little boy was horrified, and looked imploringly up at the prince, who called one of his men to see the strange pair. "Lower a boat and fetch me that child," he said, "and the fish too, if you can." When the fish heard this, he began to flounder so violently that he twitched his tail free and swam quickly off, leaving his friend gasping in the waves. The prince threw off his beautiful coat, plunged into the sea, and caught the struggling figure, holding it till the boat picked them both up. Soon they stood safe on deck, dripping with salt water, the little boy sobbing with terror and excitement. "Oh," he cried, "look, look, your lovely clothes are all spoilt." "Never mind, little man, never mind," laughed the ugly prince. "And don't cry. You're quite safe with me, and I have plenty of other clothes in my cabin." Then he sent for a great tall sailor, who took the little boy below, where he was undressed and dried, then rolled up in one of the prince's cloaks and carried on deck. "Come here," said the prince, "and tell me all about yourself." The child came up shyly and climbed upon his knee. "And how was it," continued he, "that you came to be swimming about with that great fish? Little boys don't travel in that sort of way, as a rule." His voice was so soft, and he stroked the child's hair so kindly, that the little fellow began to think he was a much nicer friend to have than the fish, with all its knowledge. So he told him of everything that had happened, and especially of the marvelous sights he had seen since he slipped over the side of his father's smack a day ago. When he had finished, there was a long silence, and he glanced up at the prince, for he felt somehow that he was looking grave. But the black mask hid everything. In a short time the ugly prince set him down and spoke a few words to his helmsman. Then the ship turned slowly round and sailed off in the direction from which the fish had come. As night drew on, they still kept steadily forward, and when the stars had come out and the last light departed, the little boy was put to bed in a beautiful cabin, all painted sea green, with a pale green curtain hanging over the door, on which was embroidered a silver crescent moon. He was laid in a soft bed, with a quilt of the same color, and soon he was far away in the land of dreams, dreaming that he was again in the sea, sinking into a world of branching seaweed and silver sand, through which swam the little fishes about which he had so often wondered. When he opened his eyes next morning, the light was peeping in through the porthole, and his clothes, which had been dried, were lying beside a bath which was waiting for him. He washed and dressed, and then went on the deck, where the ugly prince stood looking out over the ship's bows. When he saw the child, he lifted him up in his arms. "Oh," cried the little boy, "I see a dark thing far away in front. Why, it's the rock where the princess is. Are we going there?" The prince didn't answer. As the sun rose out of the ocean a short time later, the vessel was drawing very near to the rock, which rose like some dark monster out of the sea, and the prince and the little boy were on deck, the latter looking eagerly out for the captive princess. There she sat, just as she had sat the day before, and all those weary days in the years gone by, with her hands clasped over her one hope, the golden heart. 2 dark spots could be seen in the distant sky, growing smaller and smaller. They were the 2 cormorants flying off for food. As the princess saw the ship, the color rushed back into her pale cheeks. She fixed her eyes on the advancing sails, and at last distinguished the tall form of the ugly prince standing out against the sea and sky beyond. As the vessel came under the shadow of the rock, he looked up at the sweet face above him, and told her to have courage, and that he had come to take her from her long imprisonment back to the world she had left. "Throw me," he said, "the golden heart that you hold." The princess stood up. "Thank heaven that the cormorant is gone," she cried. "He stands here so that if I throw it to anyone, he may catch it in his beak and rob me of my last chance." "But throw it carefully," begged the little boy, "or the prince won't catch it." The prince smiled. "Now," he called. "But before I do so," said the princess, "I must tell you this. If you take it, it will bring you pain and sorrow, perhaps more than you can bear. Can you really accept it? Are you willing to take the trouble that must come?" The ugly prince simply held out his hands. "Throw," he said. The little boy thought he had never seen anybody look so noble as he did, standing there with his outstretched hands and his masked face turned up to the lovely, sad figure above him. A flash pierced the air, and the heart lay safe in the hands of the ugly prince. "And now," he said as he held it, "remember that there is nothing I will not do for your sake. Whatever this thing tells me to do, that will I do. Wherever it tells me to go, there will I go. And as long as there is life in me, I will not rest until I have accomplished my end." The evil birds were now seen returning over the waters, and at the sight of the ship lying anchored under the rock, they were dreadfully disturbed, and made such a flapping of wings that the witch came up from her lair to see what could be the matter. When she saw the vessel, her fury knew no bounds, and when she observed that the golden heart was gone, she nearly wrung the old cormorant's neck. "The next time you go away," she cried, "I will sit here and watch myself. And as for you," she went on, turning to the princess, "you need never think you can escape, for you shall be guarded day and night." But the princess said nothing. Meantime the ugly prince was taking counsel of his treasure. He looked long and curiously at it. Then, as he felt a little tremor fluttering between his palms, he inquired of it what he was to do to save the princess from her bondage. A radiance like a flame rose all round the heart, and a small soft voice spoke. It was so low that he had to bend down his head to catch the words. "Tonight," it said, "you must watch on deck until morning, and when the two cormorants fly away at sunrise, be careful to notice from which part of the rock the female bird comes. Then, when they have started on their flight, slip down into the water and swim to the place. It is a large cave, black and gloomy, but nevertheless swim in. The water is deep at the entrance, but when you have gone forward a few strokes, you will find a great stone rising a couple of feet above its level. Let your eyes get accustomed to the darkness, and you will see upon the top of this stone the cormorant's nest. Climb to it very softly, for in it will be the 3 little cormorants asleep. Be sure you do not wake them. Beside them you will find 3 gray feathers which you must take. The first feather will give you the power of becoming invisible when you please. The second will enable you to see in the dark, and the third will enable you to understand the language of birds. When you have secured them, make yourself invisible, and stay in the cavern until the mother bird comes home. Then keep your ears open to hear all that passes." The voice ceased, and the prince, knowing he would be told no more, buttoned the golden heart into his doublet, and prepared to wait patiently till night should come, and he could take up his post on deck to watch for the coming sunrise. The hours wore on, and day slowly faded. When the dark set in, he lay down with his eyes fixed on the heavens, hardly able to bear the time which lay between him and the morning, and when dawn came creeping on, he distinguished the dim figure of the old cormorant at his post. He stood as though carved out of the stone beneath him, until the sun's disk appeared over the horizon line, when, with a loud flapping, he rose in the air. The ugly prince lay looking at the rock as though his life depended upon it, and out from a deep shadow in the right side of the huge mass, the mother bird came flying to join her mate. He kept his eyes on the spot till the last rush of wings had died upon the air. Then he looked up at the princess and plunged into the sea. The green water had a cold chill which struck him to the marrow, but he swam steadily on, stroke after stroke, till he reached the mouth of a rugged cavern, where the rock towered above his head as though poised for a moment ere it fell to crush him to atoms. And through the darkness he saw the outline of the flat-topped stone described by the golden heart. With long strokes he swam to it, and clinging to its jagged sides, drew himself out of the water. To climb to the top was the work of a moment. Once there, he stood staring through the gloom at the nest, which was built, as he had been told, on the summit. There lay the 3 little cormorants asleep like 3 fluffy balls. He could just distinguish their soft bodies and their breasts heaving up and down in the deep breathing of their slumbers. Not a sound was to be heard but the lapping of the water, stirred by his swimming as it rose and fell against the stone's foot. As his eyes became more accustomed to the darkness, he saw beside the sleeping birds the 3 feathers for which he was searching. He put in his hand and took them, his heart beating high as he felt all 3 in his grasp, and knew that the first step of his labors was accomplished. He slid down again into the salt water, having placed his new treasures carefully in his pocket. Then he seated himself in a little niche above water-mark to await the mother bird, wishing with all his might for the promised power of seeing in the dark. Immediately every cranny in the cave became visible, and he began to wonder where the mysterious passage might be which led to the witch's dwelling. In a short time the narrow slit of light was darkened by the form of the cormorant mother coming back to the nest. She flew in and alighted by the side of her young ones. The prince lost no time in wishing for the power of understanding bird language, and as the little birds awoke, he strained every nerve to catch any speech which might pass between the four creatures. "Lie still, you tiresome little things," said the mother as they all began chattering at once. "I have got some very good fish here, but not one of you shall taste a bit of it if you make such a noise." "What a long time you've been getting it!" squeaked one of the little birds. "That's not the way to speak," observed the mother, "and you must learn not to make remarks when you are not spoken to. If your father heard you talking like that, he would punish you severely. I am always very quick about getting your food, and greediness is a very shocking fault. Remember that." "But I'm not greedy, I'm hungry." "Be silent, sir, at once." The three little birds were very much frightened at this, and kept quiet while the fish were being broken up and divided into 4 parts. When this was done, a great gobbling began, and no one spoke for some time. "Now," said the old bird, when every piece had disappeared, "I am going to speak to you very seriously." At this there was a dead silence, for all the little birds felt that their mother was in no humor to be trifled with this morning. "Remember that I forbid you all distinctly to make any noise today, or to scream or chatter loudly. I have a very good reason for doing so, and as I wish you to see for yourselves how very important it is, I will tell you about it. Are you all listening?" "Yes, yes," cried the little birds. "Your father is in great trouble," she began, "for a most disagreeable thing has happened, and our mistress is very angry. A ship is close by, and there is a strange man on board who wears a black mask. We are afraid that he has come to take the princess away. Yesterday, on our return from fishing, we found the ship here, and, what was far worse, discovered that the heart which the princess held in her hand had gone. Your father thinks there is every reason to believe that the man with the black mask has got it, and he is much distressed, for our mistress has used words to him which have hurt his feelings deeply. Now, if any of you scream and make a noise, it may draw the attention of that wicked man in the ship to this place, and he may discover the way to our mistress's cave, which lies, as I suppose you all know, behind that piece of rock shaped like a fish's head sticking out in yonder corner. If he got to her, he might do her some mischief, or perhaps force her to give him the princess, besides which he would certainly wring all your necks. And then, how would you like that?" Here one of the little birds began to cry. "How dare you make that noise?" said his mother, prodding him with her beak. "Stop crying instantly, sir, or we may all be lost." The squeaking soon ceased, and, quiet being restored, one of the little birds, being of an argumentative turn of mind, began to ask questions. "But if that dreadful man got to our mistress," he inquired, "how could he find his way to the princess afterwards?" "If he were in the cave, he might see how our mistress goes to her. You know, she takes off her left shoe and knocks at the wall with it. Then she says, 'Left foot shoe, open, rock, and I'll pass through.' And the rock opens in a straight passage, and she goes up to the top of it, right outside to where your father and the princess sit. Now I've told you enough. Be quiet." All this time the ugly prince was looking for the stone like a fish's head, and soon saw it sticking out in the remotest part of the cavern. So he began climbing towards it. It was weary work, for the cold had made his limbs stiff, and he feared to go quickly in case any sound should attract the old bird's attention. With much trouble he reached the place, and, looking behind the fish's head, saw an opening which seemed much too small for a human being to enter. He determined, however, to try what he could do, and began to creep in, finding that he could just push himself along, and although he could see no light at the other end, he pressed forward. A horrible, sickening sensation came over him when he had gone some way, and he felt as though he should be suffocated in this stifling place, from which none could deliver him, and which his crew, if they began to search for him, could never find. The air grew so close and the tunnel so narrow that he had almost given up all hope of life when his head struck against the rock, and he lay half stunned. Now, he thought, all is really lost, for I can get no further, and must die in this loathsome place. As he lay in his cramped position, he saw what seemed to be a white pebble embedded in the rock somewhere on his left. He stretched out his hand with great difficulty, and found that it came in contact with nothing solid, though it hid the white spot from his view, and he realized that the object was not a pebble at all, but a speck of light in the far distance, and that he was groping with his arm down a narrow passage, starting away at right angles from the place in which he was imprisoned. A new hope sprang up in his heart, and he dragged himself round the corner. The tunnel grew a little wider, and, with every few inches that he moved forward, his courage rose, and the outer air grew nearer. The stones tore his hands, and he was bruised in every limb as he crept along, but he pressed on till the light became larger and yellower, and the air less oppressive, and at last, after many struggles, he stood upright outside the tunnel's mouth. The end of section 1.